Hey everybody, thank you for joining us today from the KXAN Live studio. I'm Billy Gates and this is the Horns Report, where we talk about all things Texas athletics. And I'm not sure if you've heard, but Texas made a big move yesterday, a historic move. They are now full members of the Southeastern Conference, leaving the Big 12 after almost 30 years of being in the conference from its inception in 1994, and then they started playing in 96. But now they are part of the mighty SEC, where, according to their slogan, it just means more. And here to talk about it with me is KXAN sports reporter Noah Gross. And let's just get into it, Noah. Here's some video I shot of the festivities yesterday. We were both out there at varied times of the day, and not only was it super hot, but it was quite a sight. Noah, just kind of give me your brief thoughts on the celebration on campus there.
Yeah, we were kind of hanging out by the UT coaches and what they call the SEC Village. So we'll get into more of what the coaches had to say in a little bit. But as far as the fanfare and everything surrounding it, this has been a day that we've been thinking about for a while, as far as, Texas making the official move and seeing the weather, obviously, and everything going on. Students out, home for the summer in the middle of it, weren't kind of sure what the turnout was going to be, but it was unbelievable, the amount of people there. When we were walking in at around 2:30 or 3, there were people saying, yeah, we're here for the Pitbull concert, which started at 9, I believe, and he was like a half hour late as most concerts are. So people were there the entire day. The energy was incredible. One thing that I thought was interesting, as we'll get into this more later, but talking to a lot of the Texas coaches, we asked, one of the reporters asked head coach Steve Sarkisian, football, is this like how much you get to enjoy this? And he said, well, on football game days, they don't really get to enjoy Bevo Boulevard and everything that goes around it, because they just walk through, headphones on, and it's just like they're locked in for game day. This was different. He got to walk through, and it was a different animal. So the coaches seemed to appreciate yesterday as well.
And the coaches were able to sit down, meet some fans, sign some autographs there late in the afternoon, sort of leading up to the big ceremony with SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey, UT Athletic Director Chris Del Conte, President Jay Hartzell, Chairman of the Board of Regents Kevin Eltife. It was a who's who of athletic and academic administration there. So, just everybody knows that the SEC is, let's face it, it is the toughest athletic conference in college sports across the board. It doesn't really matter how you slice it. If you can love it, you can hate it, you can do whatever you want with it. Those are just facts, right? So Texas becoming part of this elite group, it sort of embodies of what Texas really is, just kind of made themselves into with their entire athletic department.
They're unbelievable right now in their quest for perfection across all sports. You go to any Texas social media outlet and it's, they won 35 Big 12 championships or whatever it was, and they really cleaned house this last year in the Big 12, competing for national titles, and it seems like at least half of the sports. And then in baseball, which is historically one of their best sports, having a down season for them, as we've talked about recently, and then going to a coach that was in the national championship game that I think myself and most people thought would be an unattainable thing. So as they head into this new conference, I've mentioned this before. We talked to Colt McCoy, Texas football legend, a couple weeks ago in the summer at his camp, and he talked about how he thought football was joining SEC at the right time, whereas, if this was 5 years ago, obviously Sark's first year, they were in this new conference, things might have gotten ugly. So it's good for football, but it seems to me like most sports are in a pretty good spot. The SEC is dominant in a lot of things. I would say track, baseball, and softball are arguably where it's just like the SEC and then a bunch of levels and then everybody else. And Texas is good in all three of those sports. They seem to be obviously improving in the one that might be lacking right now in baseball with the Schlossnagle hire. So I think you have to feel pretty good if you're a Texas fan heading into the new conference.
And, Sunday, the Texas just kind of showed the SEC what they're all about. As you see right here, the Bevo Parade with the Longhorn Band, and the big fella's going to come up here in a little bit, being marched behind his big trailer that he likes to travel in. He travels pretty comfortably, it looks like, for a big old Longhorn.
That he does. It was there was a lot of people there to see him yesterday as well. I think him and Pitbull were Sark and Pitbull were the three big attractions.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and whenever they put Bevo in his pen there on the South Mall there, there were a lot of folks trying to get a picture. There's a big fella. There he is. There's Bevo 15.
He's calm
Look at
yesterday.
it. I mean, he's just soaking it in.
Yeah.
He loves it.
Had a hot day, nevertheless.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Gosh, that was hot. And I kind of thought that might drive some folks away. But as I was leaving the festivities, I left about 5:30 right after they started walking Bevo down the street there. I couldn't even begin to estimate how many people were there, but it looked like there was, I mean, I don't even know, 10,000s. Like there was a lot of people coming in at that time. Noah, you were there to do live shots for our late shows. I mean, what was the atmosphere like that late into the evening as soon as, Pitbull got going and things like that?
A couple things. Yeah, we were doing our live shots across from the fountain and the tower where Pitbull was performing. First observation, I've never seen so much jaywalking in my life. It was unbelievable. So across MLK, every pedestrian was just not a crosswalk in sight. Secondly, yeah, I mean, it was kind of we were separated from it. The Pitbull concert was over there, but it just seemed like quite a way to kind of cap off a historic day for Texas. And as we've talked about, well, I guess we haven't talked about this part of it, but, I didn't grow up in Texas or a Texas fan, so kind of seeing everything they were making this into as far as switching a conference and making it into, like, a football game day of sorts. Yeah. I'm thinking, why is this such a big deal? Obviously, the SEC move is, but just celebrating it doesn't seem like it's worthy of this much fanfare, but it certainly was. I mean, it was an unbelievable day. And, we talked about the heat and everything, but everybody coming out, it was a really interesting atmosphere. I know they're doing the one in Norman right now for Oklahoma, but from what I saw so far, it didn't look quite the same as Texas. Obviously, the Sunday, Monday factor is a thing, but it was unbelievable yesterday.
It was truly a Texas-sized celebration, as that descriptor has been thrown around the newsroom way too much as far as I'm concerned, but nevertheless. You heard Sark talk about it in our interview with him, saying that this is Longhorn Nation, right? Just the unwavering support they have in not only their football program, but their athletic program in general. You heard Howard Jaffe, the women's tennis coach, who was at Texas A&M during the Aggies' move from the Big 12 to the SEC, and he said that Texas A&M didn't do anything like this to celebrate their move to the SEC, and that just sort of gets back to sort of why Texas is Texas and why folks really don't like them unless you bleed burnt orange.
Yeah, yesterday was an interesting one for a lot of the reasons you mentioned. Also, you talked about Sark and kind of his appreciation for it. I think one of the interesting ones is we talked to Jim Schlossnagle again very briefly. These coaches had a million things to do yesterday. Yeah. And that was really his first time, going through the main part of campus. He said when you play against Texas, which he's done a lot of times as a head coach of TCU and Texas A&M, you stay in a hotel, you go to Dish Falk Field, and you leave. You don't really get to see campus. So that was really his first chance yesterday. And obviously he's been on the job for like 72 hours or something like that, maybe 96, more like that. But regardless, he got to see it yesterday. He was impressed. So a lot of the coaches just kind of getting that experience yesterday was an interesting thing in it all. Getting to be around each other, because that's something that's rare. All the coaches kind of there in the same spot as well.
Yeah. And you look at, speaking of Schlossnagle, he had one of his assistants, aptly named Michael Early, leave Texas early after coming over from A&M. He took the Texas A&M head coaching job for their baseball program, which is interesting because there were a lot of Aggies who entered the transfer portal as soon as Schlossnagle made the announcement that he was going to move to Texas. And now with A&M hiring Early, obviously he's a guy that deserves a head coaching job. He's been assistant for quite some time. He was the hitting coach for the Aggies all 3 seasons under Schlossnagle. But that's also a move, I mean, at least from my perspective, that could save that recruiting class. I mean, it could keep Jace Lavalette there. It could keep Gavin Grahovac there. It could keep, all those guys that entered the transfer portal. It could keep them because they love Michael Early.
Yeah, and I think something that's not talked about enough in college programs is the continuity of coaching staffs. Texas football has had this pretty well. I mean, when you have a season like they had last year, you're going to lose coaches. Jeff Choate going to be the head coach in Nevada, stuff like that. The program that I think embodies this the most is Texas women's basketball. Vic Schaefer's had his assistants there since he's come here, from like the strength and conditioning staff to his assistants as well. And we've seen kind of how that program has been able to grow. So not obviously there's going to be a new staff with a head coach coming in, but Schlossnagle able to grab at least a couple of assistants and kind of bring them, and they know the strategy and how to work with Coach Schlossnagle and things like that. That's a major move for Texas. Obviously losing early is probably a big one for A&M. He knows everything that can go on in College Station, and in terms of keeping those players, they were very vocal in their support of him and hoping to bring him back on social media. But for Texas as a whole, yes, you lose early, but to have Schlossnagle not just have to pick, okay, a coach from here, let's promote somebody from here, and have totally new faces and roles where he doesn't know if he could trust them, he doesn't know how it'll fit Texas. He has largely the same group. And then Troy Tulowitzki coming in as well, who he talked about yesterday. Very excited to have him back. And he kind of could sense there might be something with Michael heading back to Michael Early, that is, heading back to College Station. And Tulo able to join the staff as well. He's excited about that. And Tulo, a guy that's been with Texas before, so it seems like that staff is kind of in a good spot.
Yeah, and with Tulowitzki, like I'm going to sound like an old man here, but I remember watching him play, when I was younger. And gosh, he was so good with the Rockies. And then with, I believe he went to the Blue Jays, and then he played his final year with the Yankees. But his heyday was when he was with Colorado. And, man, when he was in his prime, he was one of the best shortstops in the majors. And being able to have that sort of experience, along with being a good coach, like Schlossnagle said that, like, Troy has the name recognition, and he's got the accolades in Major League Baseball. But he's also a really, really good coach. And during his kind of year off that he took from Texas, when he was kind of part of their support staff, he was reportedly anyway entertaining some head coaching opportunities at the collegiate ranks, most notably in Miami. It eventually didn't get the job, but now he's a full-time assistant and the hitting coach for the Texas baseball team, and it's going to be interesting to see where he takes this roster, because they are a very good hitting team this season. The pitching is where they need to find that improvement, but we will see come next spring with the baseball team. So one more piece of Texas news I want to get to. A couple days ago, Arthur Kaluma, the Kansas State forward who had some pretty good games against Texas this season on the hardwood, is now a Longhorn. And I bring this up because ESPN app users may have gotten a push about Texas being in Jeff Borzello's way too early top 25, which means next to nothing except for folks like to talk about it like us. He put Texas in at number 22, and one of the main reasons was Kaluma's commitment to Rodney Terry and the Longhorns. I mean, that's a nice little pickup for Rodney.
Yeah, and something they needed too. This team needed another starter. Excuse me. And again, they're relying heavily on the transfer portal, which is, it can be a very good thing, but it can also be an iffy thing. We saw last year in their 5 transfers, some of them hit. Max Asmus was good. Kendall Weaver was fantastic as he got more minutes throughout the season. But as we've talked about before, Caden Shedrick fighting through some injuries, wasn't quite what they expected. He returns for now his 6th season. Ithiel Horton, not what they hoped. He was not as efficient as they liked. And then Zarek Onyema barely touched the floor in meaningful games later in the season. So you just don't know. Kaluma seems like much more of a sure thing. We asked Rodney Terry about that yesterday, and he loved the size and athleticism that Kaluma can bring. So it's just kind of matching these guys together, which takes a long time. And that's still the big question mark for me about Texas men's basketball. I might not be quite as high on them as some others may be, because last year the team was talking about they just need time to gel. They just need time to gel. Yeah. And they never really quite got there. They almost beat Tennessee in the second round of the tournament. That was one of the ugliest basketball games I've ever seen, especially in the offensive end.
It was very, very aesthetically not pleasing.
Yes. So
it was bad.
It's going to be the same thing again this year. All these new players, the thing for
Yeah.
Texas that I think is most encouraging is you have an exciting, high recruit young player in your program that you hope to develop. The last couple of years, they've gotten big recruits, but then some have decommitted, gone pro, gone to other schools, things like that. So you have somebody coming in
Yeah.
that you could hope to develop and might stay in the program a little while, especially bigs might be a bit tougher to develop on the college game. So that's the upside for me.
Yeah.
But Texas basketball, it's just about meshing. You have some pieces now, but can they kind of work together as a unit?
And that guy you mentioned coming in is Trey Johnson, number 5 in ESPN's 100. According to Borzello, like he puts projected starting lineups for every team he puts in his rankings, and he thinks Johnson's a starter, along with Oregon State transfer Jordan Pope. Go Beavs, let's go. Tremont Mark, who comes over to Arkansas. Jason Kent, who's coming over from Indiana State. We all saw the run that the Sycamores made there in the NIT, losing the title game to Seton Hall. And then he has Caden Shedrick starting at the 5. So really only one sort of familiar face there from last year's team in Borzello's projected starting lineup. So we're going to, just like everything else, like we're going to have to wait and see about Texas and the SEC. It's exciting. It certainly is tremendously exciting, really. I mean, it's probably one of the most exciting times in, modern Texas athletics history, and I would venture to guess. Wouldn't you say so?
Yeah, and I want to add one more thing on basketball. I just heard, I think Roger told us Brock Cunningham, did he say Netherlands? Yeah,
Ooh,
Brock,
the Netherlands. You see, he wanted to go to Australia.
yeah, I didn't confirm that, but I think that's what Roger said. So
Okay.
I knew he was playing overseas somewhere. So I think
good
they
for
already,
him.
Yeah, I think they already lost in the Euro Championships as well. But
That's great.
yeah, the Dutch are gaining Brock. It seems.
Good luck to Brock. I hope we hear from him and about his experiences, because that's got to be pretty cool. We all know the kind of personality Brock has. He's gonna really, really enjoy that, I'm sure.
Yeah, to say the least.
To say the least. All right, well, we'll leave it there for this edition of the Horns Report. Thanks so much for watching, and for Noah Gross, I'm Billy Gates, and we'll talk to you again very soon.